Right now, as you're hearing these words, something is happening inside your head. There's a voice. It sounds like you. It's repeating what I'm saying a half second behind me. You've heard it your entire life. You probably assume everyone has one. They don't. The voice in your head is not a universal human experience. Some people hear it almost constantly. Some hear it only sometimes, and a small percentage of human beings have lived their entire lives without ever once hearing their own thoughts the way you're hearing this sentence right now. For most of human history, nobody knew this was true, because nobody thought to ask. In 1880, a British scientist named Francis Galton became the first person to suspect that minds were not all built the same way. He sent out a questionnaire to 100 men, many of them distinguished scientists, asking them to picture their breakfast table from that morning. The colors, the arrangement, the light. He expected everyone's answer to look basically the same. The responses came back, and they didn't. Some people described their breakfast in vivid, photographic detail. Others said they saw nothing at all, not a dim image, not a fuzzy outline, nothing. One respondent wrote back with a phrase Galton would never forget. "My powers are zero. I recollect the breakfast table, but I do not see it." Galton had stumbled into something nobody had a name for. People were experiencing thought in fundamentally different ways and had no idea, because none of them had ever been inside anyone else's head. His findings were ignored for nearly a century. The assumption that everyone thinks alike was too comfortable to challenge. Then came the beeper. In 1973, a psychologist named Russell Hurlburt at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, designed a method he called descriptive experience sampling. He gave volunteers a small pager and told them to go about their day. Whenever the pager beeped at random, they had to freeze and write down exactly what was happening inside their consciousness at the moment, just before the beep, not what they thought might have been there, what was actually there. The results were strange. Hurlburt found that inner experience came in 5 basic forms. There was inner speech, words playing in the mind like a soundtrack. There was inner seeing, images and pictures. There was unsymbolized thinking, thought without words or images, just pure knowing. There was feeling, an emotion sitting in the foreground. And there was sensory awareness, focus on a physical sensation. Across decades of sampling, inner speech showed up in only about 1 in 4 moments on average. And here was the strangest finding of all. The proportions varied wildly from person to person. Some participants had inner speech in nearly every sample. Others had it in almost none. A small group reported no inner speech at all, ever. Their thinking happened, but it didn't sound like anything. Try this for a second. Stop listening to my voice and try to think about what you're going to eat tomorrow. Do it without any words. For most people, this is almost impossible. The words appear on their own. The voice runs automatically. You can't turn it off. But for others, there was never a voice to begin with. They think the way you might look at a photograph. The meaning arrives without sound. This is the part where most people start to feel slightly disoriented. Because if there's no voice, what is thinking? The first person to seriously try to answer that was a Russian psychologist named Lev Vygotsky in the 1930s. He proposed that inner speech doesn't appear out of nowhere. It develops in childhood by gradually internalizing the conversations we have with the people around us. Watch a toddler at play, and you'll hear them narrate everything out loud. They tell themselves what they're doing. They give themselves instructions. Around the age of 6 or 7, that talking goes quiet, but it doesn't disappear. It moves inward. The voice in your head, Vygotsky argued, is essentially the voice of your early environment, folded inside you, eventually becoming the soundtrack of your private mind. If that's true, then inner speech is something we learn. And some people, for reasons science still doesn't fully understand, never fully learn it. In 2024, a Danish linguist named Johan Nedergaard, working with Gary Lupien at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, proposed a name for the trait: Anendophasia. Their study compared 93 adults split into 2 groups, those who reported a high level of inner speech and those who reported very little. The low inner speech group performed significantly worse on tasks involving rhymes and word memory, but performed normally on tasks that didn't require verbal manipulation. They weren't less intelligent. They weren't less capable. They were solving the same problems with different machinery. Some of them had developed workarounds. One participant said they tapped their index finger for one type of task and their middle finger for another, building a physical system to replace the verbal one. Most people don't even know they're using. The research is still contested. Other scientists argue we can't prove anyone has zero inner speech, only that some people have very little. But the bigger picture is no longer in dispute. The voice in your head is not standard equipment. It's a setting that varies from person to person, and the range is wider than anyone imagined 100 years ago. And here is where the story turns. For decades, the assumption has been that people without an inner voice are missing something, that they have a quieter, emptier mental life, that something is wrong. But more recent thinking suggests this may have it backward. People with very little inner speech often report thinking faster because they're not bottlenecked by the speed of internal narration. Some theorists now believe the inner voice isn't thinking at all. It's just a narration of thinking that has already happened. A story your brain tells itself about a decision it already made. If that's true, then the voice in your head is not the author of your thoughts. It's the audience. Most people will never sit with that idea long enough to let it land. But it explains something strange. You've probably had a moment where you knew the answer to something before you could put it into words. A flash of recognition. A sense of yes, this. That moment is your mind thinking without language. Now imagine living your entire life inside that moment. That's what some people experience all the time. And the question that breaks people, the one that has no scientific answer and probably never will, is this. How would you ever know? You have only ever lived inside your own head. You have no way to compare your consciousness to anyone else's. The person sitting next to you on the train, the person you've been married to for 30 years, the person who raised you, may be experiencing thought in a way you cannot imagine and could never verify. They use the same words you do. They describe the same world. But the inside of their head might be silent in a way yours has never been, or yours might be silent in a way theirs never has. There is no test for this. There is no instrument that can read another person's inner experience. We have been living next to each other for 200,000 years, sharing meals and beds and conversations, and we have no way of knowing whether the people we love are hearing voices in their heads or moving through their lives in absolute silence. You spent your whole life assuming everyone else's mind worked like yours. It doesn't. And the strangest part is that you'll never know how it actually works for anyone but you. Every person you've ever met has been a closed room. You've been listening to the doors.